Community leaders throughout the country are pulling out all the stops on trying to develop talent in young people. Well, you're going to want to hear some ideas from Park Ginder on the Midwest Flourish. Greetings, I'm Rick Farrant, and I am your host for the Midwest Flourish. Our guest is Dr. Park Ginder, former school superintendent and now the executive director of Grow Allen in Allen County. Welcome, Park.
Thank you.
Ron Turpin was on a podcast fairly recently, and he was the founder of Grow Allen, which helps young people get lifelong learning opportunities and credentials so that they can be successful and also so that they will enhance the economic vitality of Northeast Indiana. And I do want to talk a little about that, but mostly what I want to do during our time here is delve into this whole situation of trying to get young people generally ready for the workforce and also to have them learn beyond high school, a simple high school education. But initially, where is Grow Allen now, and what have some of its successes been?
Great question. Grow Allen's a convener bringing business, industry, and schools together to service kids. So we've done a lot of things with just conversationally with businesses that have led to what we're calling workforce windows tours. Those tours take students from their home schools out to business and industry locations, and they get to see firsthand on site some of these places that are potential career locations, or maybe just a place to help kids understand what happens in industry and business. And so I say that because as a high school principal, before as a superintendent, we often hosted career days or career fairs. And one of the things I learned there was you and I bring our business in, we throw our logo over the top of a table, we have some swag, and the kids wander around, but they really don't understand what happens behind the doors of given business and all the opportunities that are in a given industry. So they don't see logistics, they don't see HR, they don't understand the accounting pieces that go into, oh, this widget maker has all these other opportunities. All these other opportunities. So by taking kids to specific sites, and we've been to a lot of places already in Fort Wayne and Allen County. So in New Haven, we've taken New Haven High School students to Continental Diamond Tool and Souder Manufacturing because they drive by these two locations every day and they don't know what's going on there. A lot of aha moments for our kids. And it's done similar things with the military. So we had our first ever county-wide tour of the 122nd Fighter Wing, which took kids out there, and it's interesting to watch their eyes open. Yes, the F-16s are amazing, but to find out the educational opportunities that are tied to military service is really kind of a I can do this and become a mechanic or work in health careers and those kinds of things. So that's just one facet, but a lot of it has to do with just opening opportunities for kids in industry through internships and work-based learning opportunities. Had a lot of companies step forward with, we'd like a high school intern or two. I always counsel them a little bit against jumping in too quickly because sometimes the best high school intern the worst high school intern to have is the best one because he or she goes so fast, does so well. They walk in on Monday and you're like, oh, shoot, I forgot this kid and I don't have anything for him to do today. But there's a lot of opportunity there, and a lot of it has to do with opening kids' eyes to things beyond sandwich shops and retail.
So there need to be outcomes from this.
Yeah.
And actually, frankly, there have been some other organizations that have done similar things, but maybe not on this scale, but have done similar things. This is something that takes a long time, right, to figure out outcomes. So how are you going to figure out, there's one measure of success, which is we took X number of kids into businesses.
Right.
Is there a metric that you're looking at or that you want to devise that will say, okay, 5 years, 10 years down the road, it was successful because?
Yeah. I think a lot of that's going to become site-specific. You're right. It's a long-term play. If I take a sophomore or junior into your facility today, we aren't likely to see them hired or matriculate to a university or college or certification setting that brings them back for a number of years, 2 to 5 years. So I think there's going to be some things like you would see, hopefully Mr. Kelly Automotive would tell you, hey, we invested in these kids. Look what's happened. We're now bringing them back, and they're working in my facility. So we invested in them short term, but long term, now I have a group of people coming back into my company. There are a lot of potential partners looking at that now as hey, this might work for us. Local 166 was one of the first. If you were to tour their facility several years ago, it sat still during the day, but now there are 84 kids a day being trained in that facility, a multi-million-dollar facility. And they would tell you they're starting to see really strong results now after 5 years of that programming. And as we develop some things this coming fall in diesel mechanics and some other car mechanic kind of opportunities, that's limited, but now we're starting to see some opportunities at Sweetwater and some other places that are willing to say, hey, you know what, we have need for these kids. We'd be willing to work with them, train them, and see where it lands. I think it's a long play. It's 2 or 3 to 5 years out.
And does Grow Allen intend to go back in and sort of put together some data to show?
Oh, certainly.
You will.
Now, there's some difficulty in that, right? The schools have learned this because you can't track a kid after graduation.
Yep.
But so where we are going to be very reliant on the Continental Diamond tools, the solder manufacturings, the Shambaws of the community, to have them say, hey, we did this. It led to an internship. It led to a learning opportunity. And we got 6 kids back out of it.
Pretty much you have to depend on the employers to do the reporting. The Don Wood Foundation and Cuesta Education Foundation recently launched a initiative called Learn More, Earn More, which is designed to encourage young people to acquire learning beyond high school, which could mean a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, a short-term certification, anything beyond just simply a high school education.
Yes.
Does that initiative align with what Grow Allen is doing?
Yeah, most certainly. As a matter of fact, there were a lot of things with the initial Cuesta and Don Wood research that we based a lot of our initial ideas and launch out of. Those two things kind of were simultaneously happening. When the idea for Grow Allen kind of bubbled up and the 4 superintendents and a lot of key individuals in the community were coming together to talk about it, that was the same time that the initial study, the 2023 study, came out. And I think that undergirds the need, gives everybody a real strong understanding of why certifications and education beyond high school is important. Not just in Allen County, but in the region. Now, Grow Allen, obviously, is concentrating on Allen County. But when we look and see that the numbers suggest a need for more than 5,000 certificate and college earning degrees in our region, that's significant. Mm-hmm. And to not try to influence that in a positive manner would be foolhardy for our economy, for our community, and for these kids individually. It is an interesting time. The level of change that's been brought about through the state with the new diploma and all those things have really shaken some things. And so it's a great time to be creative. And the data that Cuesta and Don Wood have provided helps us to at least have a target.
Yeah. So when I was in high school 50-some years ago, I do not recall ever speaking to any school personnel about my future. Nor did they come to me to talk about my future. It was pretty much get your academics done, do enough that you can get a degree, and off you go wherever you're going. And speaking for myself, but I think for a lot of my peers, some of them I've kept track of, for the most part, they did pretty well. They did pretty well academically after high school. They did well with careers after high school. And now we're in this environment, which we've been in for some time now, where there are all these initiatives and all these strategies of trying to get young people, sent in the proper direction. Kind of crazy for someone who never experienced any of that. How do we find ourselves in this position with young people today?
I've never been convinced that it's as bad as maybe our generation thinks it is. Looking at the needs have changed. There's a lot more technology involved. There's a lot more rapid change. You know, when you were 50 years, I was 40. A lot of things in the manufacturing world that my peers went into no longer exist. I think I told you at one point a vignette about I had a high school teacher who was convinced I should go to Dana because I could be a bench drawer right off the bat and make $17 an hour. A lot of those opportunities don't exist anymore for kids, not in the same way they did for you and I. And that's why the need for increased training exists. There's similar work out there in advanced manufacturing. But think about just this room right now and the number of pieces of technology. What we're doing today didn't exist when we were kids either. And yes, someone could stumble into the ability to work with video and all of the marketing kinds of things that happen today, but it was a different world. I'm not sure I've answered your question.
Well, I think you've talked about it, one specifically just about talent and skills.
Yeah.
But there's another issue that's going on, which is motivation.
Yeah.
And that factors into it too. I'm not trying to brag. I sort of know your history, and I know you put in a lot of work and a lot of study to get to where you are today. I worked a lot of crappy jobs before my journalism career took over, and then marketing. But there seemed to be, we've even noticed this in some of the focus groups that we participated in the Learn More, Earn More campaign. There just seems to be not only a lack of motivation, but a lack of interest in being motivated. And I think that's different than it was 40 or 50 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. I always say that kids flourish in an environment of structure. And I do think in many of our communities, we lack structure. You know, you and I used to have a lot of guardrails. A lot of those guardrails have come down, and the kids are floundering. And that has a lot to do with economics, but we also sell to the world a message that everything's failing, everything's devolving, and it's changing. It's always changing. This era is no different than our era. You know, the gray heads of our day thought we were lost too, I'm sure. But I know kids want the best things for their own lives. They just need to have conversations about them. Now, like you said, I don't remember having any conversations with a school person other than a couple of teachers. Hey, you're really kind of good at this. What'd you think of that?
Right. I had conversations, but not, it was, hey, you're really good at this, but not what do you think about the future. It was, hey, you're pretty good, you're pretty good at this, which was probably their way of encouraging me to keep doing whatever it was that I was doing.
Yeah.
But as far as actually sitting down, as far as even having experiential opportunities, the experiential opportunities I created.
Right.
I walked into a business and said, hey, is there anything I can do? And so I'm saying, and where we are today is that we've got all these initiatives where we're feeling that we need to provide all these things for these young people to take them into industry or to show them the various options they have. For instance, do I go into trades? Do I go into college? I mean, none of that was happening. Right. So somewhere along the line, we think that's necessary.
Right. And I think some of that's related to, this isn't a popular opinion, but prior to our generation, it wasn't unusual prior to World War II for a young kid, 16, 17, 18 years old, to go into business for themselves, to do big things. And then we created this teenage experience. And we've fostered that so much that I think sometimes we're surprised when we meet a kid who's got his or her stuff all together. And yet, I think they're out there in the same numbers they were when you and I were kids. We've just created
That's really optimistic, Park, because they are out there.
Yeah.
But when you say in the same numbers, I kind of question that. They are out there. I've met them.
Yes.
Spoken like a true former principal and superintendent who cares about kids
Yeah.
and wants to put the most positive spin on it, right?
Well, I don't know that it's just a spin, but yes, it's definitely positive. I believe in kids, and And I do think exposure matters because there are families, there are kids in our community who don't have access or don't see a way out of where they are. And those kids are the ones where we really need to foster some new opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the terms that's been bandied about a lot in our region and elsewhere, I think I mean, it comes up all the time, is this in-demand, high-wage jobs. Yeah. Everybody's using it. Yeah. And it seems to me that focuses, I guess, on individual prosperity, but I almost feel like it focuses a little bit more on the economy at large. And what I'm wondering is, whatever happened to encouraging a young person to do what they love, to seek out what they love, and have a successful career at that?
Yeah, I think we've made some decisions. I agree. And the problem I see with the high demand, high wage notion, there aren't that many. If $32 an hour is the beginning of high wage, there aren't many of those jobs out there for a young person.
Correct.
So that's where the certifications and the degrees and things come through. But we also have to help that student understand, or that young person understand, that this is a process. You're writing your life story. You are not likely. Yes, we all know somebody who launched at age 18 and all of a sudden they're wealthy and they bought the house down the street. But the rest of us built wealth and success over time. And that didn't matter what neighborhood you came from. Mm-hmm. I also think sometimes we get confused with the acquisition of stuff with actual success. This wasn't going to be popular either, but I often say that we suffer from air conditioning. Your generation and mine, we didn't have air conditioning, we didn't have cable television, we didn't have color TV, and we came out perfect. Okay, perfect.
Okay, speak for, I know I did not come out perfect, but I'll grant you your perfection.
Yes, that was the operative term there. But there is a notion that every kid needs to launch to these things immediately, and no, your parents ground it out. You know, they worked, you worked. It's okay to buy the little house down the road, or to rent for a while, or drive that beater. You know, think about in your own life. I know in my life we didn't buy new cars, right? I may have one now, but that's, I'm 61 years old, so maybe it was my turn, But anyway, I think there has to be a leveling, too, of expectation. I want my kids to have more than I had. But does that need to be more stuff, or just a different kind of excellent life than I had?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, because the high wage, high demand notion suggests that when a student, whether they're coming out of high school or they're coming out of college or they've acquired a certificate, that they should be looking at these few high-wage, high-demand jobs and have the expectation, right, that they can just walk in the door. Right. We've done that to them.
Yes, I think we have. And if you, and I know you've done this, I've been in multiple businesses in this community, well over 100 in this last year. I haven't met anybody who doesn't create opportunities within their organization, within their business, for you to move up.
Yeah.
And that's a sales point. Yes, we're going to bring you in at $22 or $24 an hour, but if you do X and Y, within a year you're making 26, and this happens and this happens. Opportunities are often created, and we need to let kids know that this part of life is writing your story and making these opportunities and creating them as you go. Yeah.
Another thing that we've noticed, and I just looked at some fairly recent statistics on it, our kids are struggling academically.
A lot of them are.
But I mean, if you look at it across the board, it's either declining or the progress has sort of stalled. Good word.
Thank you.
Love that word, because I was searching for a word. But that is correct. With all of this effort that we're giving, with states and federal governments coming up with all these plans of how we're supposed to teach kids, with nonprofit community organizations coming up with experiential learning opportunities and various other things, how are we finding ourselves in a position where we have this lack of progress generally speaking, academically.
Yeah, this isn't going to be popular either. The data shows that two-parent homes, kids coming from two-parent homes are significantly more successful academically and then post than those of single-parent homes. That isn't to say that there aren't successes in single-parent homes, but as our culture has changed, I would say, show me your zip code, I'll show you your success. I was very, very fortunate to teach at Northrop High School back in the 80s and 90s, and also as a high school baseball coach. Even coaching during springtime high school baseball, we noticed and had conversations among coaching staff. When we had our best teams, we had our best families. I hurt for those kids that are on their own, and many, many of them are. And they come from not just poor families, Section 8 housing, single mom. They're also coming now for the first time from families where both mom and dad are earners, but they're not interactive in their child's life. Go to a simple family restaurant and watch them interact or lack of interaction as they're eating with 6 different people at the table all in their phone, all looking and scrolling and not having conversation. Over time, I believe that has played out in the classroom. Our kids come to school unprepared, haven't been taught to read, don't know simplest things. And for the first time ever, we started seeing, I would say 6 to 8 years ago, kids come to school who weren't even potty trained. I don't know how that happened culturally. I know our teachers, our administrators, our guidance counselors, they're pouring their lives into these kids and doing amazing things with them, taking them further, farther, faster than we ever did, but they've got a much wider range of student academic preparation to deal with. And when a young person comes to school behind, they almost never catch up. And it's so different. The expectations, particularly at the high school level, we've pushed so many high school classes down into the middle school that level of separation between the knows and don't knows, the haves and the have-nots, is getting greater because the kids who know algebra in 7th grade are now way ahead of the kid who's taking algebra in 9th grade. Mm-hmm. You and I, everybody took algebra in 9th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah. The outliers are farther out than they've ever been. There's still this core of kids in the middle, the 60% is what I call them, that need us in a different way than they used to. And a lot of that's just culturally. They're not stupid. They are fantastic. But they're looking for redemption and support that they're not getting at home.
And so a lot of this, I will get to the parent in the home. Hopefully we'll have some time to get to that whole issue, which is, has been difficult for everyone to do. I want to make sure I get this right, so I'm going to look down. Einstein posited that curiosity and imagination are more important than formal education.
Yeah.
Do you buy that? And how do we ensure that students of today are curious and imaginative beyond the current rigid boundaries of learning? Now, you say that maybe we're loosening up a little bit, but there's still some rigidity in what is required of a student to graduate from high school.
Yes.
So how do we get them to be curious and imaginative and then meet these rigid guidelines that they need for graduation?
Yeah. I'm not a fan of all the testing that's going on. But to answer your Einstein comment first, yes, I agree. Creativity and the desire to learn are more important than the degree or the diploma at the end. On graduation day, I always used to tell our kids, there's 660 kids in this room, and today you're all the same. You're graduates. And everything that happened in 3rd grade, everything that happened in 7th grade, 8th grade, it no longer matters. Go, launch, be yourself, I always got a lot of rave reviews about the talk. I don't know what happened to it afterwards, right? But I do think there are some elements. We all want metrics. We talked about metrics of Grow Allen. Yes, what gets measured gets done. but not everything that's measured is important.
Yeah.
And we all know kids, people, individuals in our community, in business, bankers who were not great students. A lot of A students are working for C students. Just because you were good in school doesn't mean you're going to be successful at the next thing.
Are you saying then that you're acknowledging that academic performance has either declined or stalled, depending on, whether we're looking at math or science or whatever we have to be. Are you saying then that it doesn't matter as much as we think it does, that the actual numbers of academic performance are not growing, that there are other things we need to be looking at in each student?
Good question. Yes. I think there are other things we need to be looking at, and they are on the edges. They're soft skills. They aren't a hard score. Now, an SAT score is valid, and it shows an aptitude, and it kind of separates where I can go to college and where you can go to college, or the same as an LSAT or all the other things that you might take. But within any field of study, there's that person who comes to the game with more or less talent than you, who ends up higher on the hierarchy because of it. And not everybody comes to the game with it. I was an art student. I didn't have it. I was a plugger. But my college roommate and this other young woman, they were way better than I were because they created from within in a way I didn't.
You know what? I'm sure as an art student, your future was looking pretty bleak for a while.
What do you mean?
Careers in art? Come on.
Oh, in 1982, I graduated. The computers didn't even exist at Ball State University in the art department. So, you learned how to use your hands. Bleak, I don't remember it ever being bleak, but there was a period of time where there was fear in the schools that they were going to cancel our art program.
Yeah, well, I just remember the stories about parents that would go, "What, you're going into art?"
My dad struggled a little bit with
there
that.
You go. That's where I was coming from that.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect segue in the last few minutes that we have. Personally, you mentioned in your doctoral dissertation.
Yeah.
That actually is the introduction of your doctoral dissertation.
Yeah.
Which
is probably better than the whole paper, honestly.
Well, I didn't read the whole paper. I read some of it.
Good for you. I haven't looked at it since I wrote it.
But you said that it was dedicated to your parents who provided the love and structure to launch 5 successful kids into the world.
Yeah.
What specifically, and this is where we get to parents and home, what specifically did your parents provide that allowed you to achieve?
My mom and dad, they're great. They're still here today. They're both in their mid-80s. They weren't throwing around a lot of I love yous, but we knew we were loved. We were well-fed. We didn't have a lot of clothes, but we were clean. Dad was a teacher. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. Dad worked his butt off in the summer as a painter or summer school. Depending, he moved around a little bit to keep it fresh, but every summer he worked. And we knew Dad got up at 4:30 in the morning and disappeared and came back, and there was no question that he didn't love us. There was no question that when Mom said, there was a note on the table every morning, Park, you have to weed 8 rows of green beans. And she went down through the family list, and every kid had head to the garden work to do, right? Sweat your butt off. She got up at 4:30 or 5:30 and did stuff when it was cool. One of the things I think my parents did really well, and I think I mentioned this to you in another format, I don't believe in quality time or quality time with your family. What they need is quantity time from mom and dad. They need to see dad when he hammers his thumb and doesn't swear. They need to see dad in a way when he took you to sledding at Franke Park and at age 45 jumped on the sled and went head down, and enjoyed it. When we got to see our parents living life and interacting with people, whether it was in a faith community, whether it was at the ballpark and Little League, it didn't matter where it was, I became aware of what I was going to be in life because I was living with the example of my father and my mother. And they took us everywhere. We didn't take vacations. There was no money to go to a fancy vacation. if we took a trip, they tried to tie it to one of our kids' interests. When I say one of our kids, one of my brothers or sisters or myself. We knew we were loved. We knew we had access, and we knew they were high expectations, even though those weren't really spoken. So here's an example. I was a terrible high school math student because I pushed against it. And I would get a D one quarter and then bring home that grade card. And my dad would say, every night, 30 minutes, you and me. And I would get an A the next quarter. And I was in Algebra 2. And I remember taking a test in Mr. Beard's class, and I got 200 out of 200 points. And he said, how'd you do this? Because I'd been failing.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm working on it with my dad. And I said, you gave me that test today, again, now, and tomorrow, and I'll get a 200 again. I'll get it perfectly right. And he looked at me like I was crazy. My parents never scolded us. I don't remember being shamed. I don't remember being pushed in a way that made me feel less than. But we knew if we screwed up, the clamp was there. That was Dad's big hand. He'd put it on your shoulder, he'd put it on your knee, and you knew it was time to cut it out. And that applied to school. That applied to the way we behaved. I just think the most important thing parents can do for their kids is to spend quantity time with them so that they see you living life, reading, studying. My dad would grade papers every night. We watched him do it. It was just their daily example that mattered.
Yeah. Did you ever help him grade papers?
Are you kidding me? No way.
Oh. Because my little anecdote is my mother was an English teacher, and she allowed me when I was in high school to grade some of the high school from her high school. It was a different high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. They never knew.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was sort of how I learned English, was helping her grade papers.
Yeah. I probably would have been good for me to be grading my dad's algebra or geometry papers, or I'm sure he did trig and calc at one point too. That would have been over my head given my approach at the time. But no, I don't remember grading.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, Park, it's been great. It's been wonderful spending time with you.
Thank you.
You have lots of interesting perspectives. Perhaps we'll do this again.
All right.
Thank you for being on.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the Midwest Flourish podcast. Want to dig deeper or get involved? Head to marketingthemidwest.com to explore how we can work together to empower your community to flourish. Let's keep the Midwest momentum going and shape the future of our region together.